It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Hello. Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That's Alan Saunders, currently on his Steelers Afternoon Drive. Alan, what's going on?
Just leaving the facility Wednesday. Big newsy Wednesday. A lot of stuff going on. Interesting. Always, long week, so you never know what's going to happen when. But I felt like there was a lot we learned today at practice. A lot of stuff going on in general with the team still. There's just a ton. I put a thread on Twitter of all the news, the news from today, and it's like 13 tweets long. I just feel like there's a lot going on right now.
That's actually what is on my laptop screen right now. On another tab is all the stories that you wrote over there. A lot of quick hitter stuff. But I think first and foremost, let's talk about the injury updates. Diontae Johnson, though he was at practice today, a timeline was put out, potentially about a 4-week injury for him. Again, like we've talked about before, it did look like a pretty significant hamstring injury for him. That would put him out until their bye week. So, again, you're talking about a huge loss within the offense. If Steelers fans already do not appreciate Diontae Johnson, his absence will certainly be noticeable. But yeah, I don't know that I guess we learned more about what the time frame was. We knew it was going to be a multi-week absence, but yeah, if it's about a month or so without Diontae Johnson, man, we'll see what this offense can do.
Yeah, I talked to Mike Tomlin after practice, and he basically said, we're going to wait until the last minute to decide what we do in terms of a roster move. So, that kind of tells me, it's not 2 weeks, and it's not definitely 5, right? Because either of those, there would be no question. He would have just said, no, we're not, or, yeah, we probably will eventually. Now, they don't, even if they've decided they're going to make that move, there's no reason to make it now. They don't necessarily need the roster spot for anything. But it does seem like, he's kind of going to be right on the line as will he miss 4 weeks? Will he not? Do they hold the roster spot for him to give him the chance to come back for that last game, that fourth game before the bye week, which, by the way, is the Baltimore Ravens. So that's, you don't want to put Diontae Johnson on the injured reserve and be like, he's probably going to be out, only to have him come up to you the week of the Ravens game and say, I'm fine, I'm ready to play, and then you can't, right? And with the new injured reserve rules, the injured reserve and the practice squad rules, you can bring up a practice squad player and play them for 3 weeks in a row. And so there isn't really, and the Steelers already scratched Gunnar Olszewski, so they have an extra wide receiver to begin with. They've got 3 wide receivers on the practice squad, so they can even rotate through 1 or 2 guys if they want to do that. There is no real gun to their head decision that needs to be made to put Diontae Johnson on the injured reserve. So I kind of got the vibe that they're thinking about not, and so that there is a chance that he could come back that week before the bye. I think that would probably be the earliest we could see him, but it does seem like there's a chance that he could play in that week 4 game against Baltimore, which obviously, who knows what happens in the next 3 weeks, but looks like it will be a big early season test.
Yeah, and as far as Cam Heyward, they also haven't made the move, putting him on IR, although that is going to happen. Is there a reason they haven't done that one yet either?
Just a lack of a need to have the roster spot open. Doesn't seem like they're going to sign someone from outside the organization for that spot. They really like their depth. They had 7 on the active roster. They got Braden Fajoko and Jonathan Marshall on the practice squad. And I don't think they feel like they're going to get somebody who this week is going to go make some kind of difference that they just need that roster spot for. I believe he will end up on the injured reserve before this game because you want it to count towards the 4 games that he has to miss, but there's no need to have that move made today as opposed to Sunday, which is when I expect it will be made.
Also, not injury related, but I wanted to ask. Somebody asked me about this name, wanted me to bring him up to you. Des Fitzpatrick, who's on the practice squad. He was a name that we heard in training camp. Didn't make much of a splash in preseason, other than some plays on special teams. But could he be part of the active roster, or this? Again, you're not going to have a perfect solution to replace Diontae Johnson, but could he potentially get a helmet on Sunday? Or I'm sorry, Monday night.
It would not surprise me if Des Fitzpatrick gets caught up in the practice squad. Another guy that really wouldn't surprise me is Simi Fehoko. I think he's looked really good since they brought him in. And he's kind of a bigger, like more obviously outside receiver guy. And the reason I say that is attractive is that, you figure, okay, Allen Robinson has been playing in the slot. Calvin Austin, probably best used in the slot. Next guy up, Gunnar Olszewski, certainly best used in the slot. And so maybe if you're looking at like who's dressing in this game, another guy to play outside, and we don't know if Miles Boykin is going to play or not either. He was in a walking boot Monday, was not in a walking boot today, but we haven't seen a practice report yet. Would be surprised if he's fully healthy at this point. That gives you a backup outside wide receiver that I think right now they sort of lack. So I kind of think if they're going to call somebody up, it might be Fehoko, both Fehokos, maybe. We could see a double Fehoko practice squad elevation for this one. But again, they don't need to be elevated to 53-man roster to be active for this game, to play in this game. And so, there isn't really a big stressor to get these guys off the active roster.
Gotcha. Okay. You mentioned Miles Boykin right there, in a boot, not in a boot. The other guys that were injured or came out of that game with injuries, an Okorafor, James Daniels, Pat Freiermuth, DeMarvin Leal, Miles Boykin. What have we learned about those guys?
Okay, let's start with Leal. Actually, let's start with all the good news. Leal said he's good to go. Triceps injury, he said he's going to play. James Daniels said he's going to play, some kind of foot or ankle injury. And Pat Freiermuth said he's fine with a chest injury. Although I would be surprised if Freiermuth is listed as a full participant, because Rodney Williams was doing some work with the first team. So, probably looking at some limited guys in terms of practice report, but I would be very surprised if all three of those guys don't play on Monday. Chuks Okorafor also did not practice and is in the concussion protocol, so they're not going to really be a lot of updates on him. Mike Tomlin expressed some good. He kind of gave some encouraging thoughts that he thought that Chuks would be able to play on Tuesday. But very interestingly, without Chuks there, Broderick Jones at right tackle.
Yes.
And so I think that is interesting. Obviously, when Chuks went down late in that San Francisco game, Dan Moore played on the right side and Broderick Jones played on the left. So you can kind of take this one of two ways, right? Either they're pretty sure Chuks is going to play, and it's not like Dan Moore doesn't need to practice, so they want Moore to practice where he's going to play, and they're just flipping Broderick Jones over there just to make sure. Or, they want to have a couple options here. If Chuks can't play, they've seen how it looks one way. And Dan Moore, remember, played right tackle a series in that Atlanta game, also had like a day of training camp where he played some right tackle. We haven't seen Jones over there at all. He did play there in college, but I think you can kind of take it either way, right? Either Chuks is fine and they're just doing this so they don't have to, they're not having Dan practice at right tackle all week and then play at left, or Chuks is not fine and they want to see what the options are in terms of how they replace him.
I mean, that's totally. I know that he's played there in college and stuff, but like from a footwork perspective and hand usage stuff that they're pretty much totally redoing with Broderick, stripping him down to the studs and having him relearn, because there is some technical things for him to clean up. To have him going on the right side and do it, I was surprised when you told me that, but right before we started recording, because I just assumed, okay, if Chuks can't go, we're going to see Broderick on the left and Dan Moore on the right. You said you can take it either way. Which way would you be taking it? Which way are you looking at it right now?
To me, I think that Dan Moore was not that good in that game, and they want him to get his reps at left tackle, and they're banking on Chuks being able to play. And, this also does give them another option. It doesn't hurt to see, because, look, I mean, they're only going to make 3 tackles. Only 3 tackles are going to dress all year. And so Like, it doesn't hurt to have them be able to play in different combinations. I think the thing that's, stands out the most to me is that, Broderick Jones is going to be the starting left tackle eventually. After Dan Moore had a pretty strong training camp, I think the idea a lot of us had was that, maybe this time next year, Heyward and Chooks will be battling at right tackle. And so, I don't know, it was only 4 snaps, but it didn't go that well for Dan over there. So, I don't know, maybe they are not that I don't know. It's very interesting to me. I'm not really quite sure what to make of it.
Yeah, I guess the bigger question will be, do we continue to see this happen at all? Obviously, and they have the extra day before the game being on Monday night. So, what does tomorrow look like during a week where they play on Monday night? Is it a normal day?
So we have all normal days, and then there are just 2 Fridays, basically.
Okay.
So Friday is usually the lightest practice of the week. It's more like a walkthrough. They'll do 2 Fridays. Friday will be a Friday, and Saturday will be a Friday, and the whole rest of the week is normal.
Gotcha. Okay. Alan, maybe we can file this one under silly season stuff, but Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, listed the Steelers as one of the teams that could afford to trade a quarterback to the Jets. Obviously, the Jets may be shopping for a veteran quarterback after Aaron Rodgers goes down. To be in that room with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle, who they have on the practice squad. Does this make any sense to you? Would a trade of Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph to the Jets make sense?
Yes, Mitch Trubisky for Quinn Williams. I think both teams can solve their problems with what they need. Steelers need D tackle. Jets.
I guess I would also be okay with Garrett Wilson, if that's the route they want to go.
That would also be okay. Look, I don't think the Steelers are going to trade Mitch Trubisky. One of the stories I wrote today was that Kenny Pickett is shooting up the odds board of first quarterback to be benched. The Steelers signed Trubisky to a 3-year contract. He has guaranteed money in there. It would be a pain in the butt to trade him from a salary cap standpoint. And I just don't think I think they have a lot of faith in Kenny Pickett, but I don't think they have unmitigated faith in Kenny Pickett. Also, Kenny's had 2 concussions in 7 weeks of NFL football. They really want a quality backup. I don't think Mitch Trubisky's going anywhere. If somebody asks about Mason Rudolph and is willing to offer anything of actual value, I assume the Steelers would be willing to entertain that, but I have no idea if the Jets will or not.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually, we had a conversation Nick and I did when there was something thrown out there about the Patriots potentially being interested in Mason Rudolph weeks ago. And it was man, any team in the league, of course, situations change and a team could get desperate, but any team in the league could have had Mason Rudolph for a while. And he comes back to Pittsburgh to be the number 3 quarterback. So who's going to give up draft capital for this guy after, watching him sit on the market for that long? Again,
if Zach Wilson goes out and gets hurt this week, maybe, because then you got a team that's desperate. But, I don't know. It doesn't seem that likely to me, and it doesn't seem like it would be on the front burner of moves that Omar would be pushing to make right now.
I do want to ask, though, I don't want to make this too big of a topic, but I wanted to ask about the 3 quarterback thing just because of so many teams maybe seeing what happened to San Fran last year and operating differently with the way things went in San Fran last year. Do you think that would maybe scare the Steelers away from and wanting to keep 3 quarterbacks?
I think the Steelers would fill the roster spot with a 3rd quarterback. They just might say, we don't need to have 3 quarterbacks this good and trade Mason Rudolph in order to re-sign Tanner Morgan or sign whoever's available, I don't think that they would go into the year with just 2 quarterbacks.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I would agree. Alan, something that we didn't talk about much or at all really these last few days and recapping this game against the 49ers was the run game or lack of. There just weren't many opportunities on the ground. Now, obviously game script wasn't necessarily favorable for them to do much on the ground, but the question is, did the Steelers abandon the run game too early? Did they put Kenny Pickett in a position to fail, having him throw the ball 40 plus times in this one?
I want to hear your thoughts on this because apparently we had a YouTube comment that says I talk too much. So we've got to balance it out here a little bit What do you think? Did the Steelers abandon the run too soon?
See, like when you go down, when you snap your fingers and you're down 3 possessions, I think it's hard to establish anything on the ground and get to a formula that the Steelers want to play at that point. I mean, it's 17-0 early in the second quarter. Like what are you supposed to do on the ground? You got to pass the ball to try to be able to catch up. I just don't think it was favorable for them to try to be able to establish anything on the ground. And that's kind of where I've been at with it. I've never even like second questioned the lack of rushing attempts that they had in this game because it was so lopsided on the scoreboard. I just felt like it wasn't favorable for them to try to do anything.
Yeah, I actually thought that they needed to take some more downfield shots early in the game to open up the running game. Like, the 49ers were really packing the line of scrimmage early on. There wasn't that, like, here's a 20-yarder to George, here's Freiermuth up the seam to try to move those second-level defenders. Didn't see a lot of that. And then I think – so as a result, like, the early runs weren't working. So it would be one thing if you were running the ball okay, but you fell behind like 17 points. Like, didn't the Eagles fall behind by a bunch this week, or playing the Patriots, I think? Somebody else did too. And then they eventually caught back up, right? I think it would be one thing if the Steelers felt good about their running game, but their early runs just got stuffed. Like, there was no joy in the running game. The only time they had a good run was when Najee Harris kind of made something out of nothing on that 2-minute drive and really rescued the whole thing because, I mean, I think at that point, 3rd and 1, they're handing off their own 10-yard line. Like, I mean, they're just hoping to get a first down and call some plays there. I didn't feel like they were necessarily aggressively into the 2-minute drill until that run hit. So I think it's a combination of the score and game. Maybe that becomes a little bit of a more realistic option than what it felt like in that one.
Yeah, I was looking at now. I didn't know off the top of your head if you could tell me how many rushing attempts that they had, but they only had 10 rushing attempts in this game. So 6 for Najee Harris, 3 for Jalen Warren, 1 for Kenny Pickett. Actually, I feel like I could spin this conversation into something else because somebody brought this up to me. Did you feel like Kenny didn't use his legs? And I mean, he only had 1 rushing attempt, but did he have the opportunities to use his legs more? And whether that's just extending plays outside of the pocket or actually running the ball down the field and creating some first downs with his legs, were there opportunities there in your mind that he just didn't take advantage of?
I don't feel like he was feeling the rush well enough to do that. You know, he was. It was like he, like he wouldn't react until the guy was very close to him, and then you're kind of running for your life, and you're not in a good situation to make a move on someone, or to, that's a very athletic defensive line and a really, really fast line. It's not just Warner too, like Greenlaw, like they got some killers at linebacker coming up. And so I think that's a tough team to run as a quarterback against, just because you have fast guys coming behind you and fast guys pursuing in front of you. They're not going to give you a lot of space to run as a quarterback. And, the 49ers never – I feel like that you run as a quarterback against the blitz, but the 49ers never needed to blitz. So, that's when I think you run is that, like look what happened to the Steelers. They blitz Minkah Fitzpatrick, and then Brock Purdy gets around the end, right, and makes a play. The 49ers never blitzed, so there weren't really that many opportunities for Pickett to use his legs because he was always contained. And I think where that's the kind of thing that happens when you have a lopsided score all game.
Was the lack of rushing attempts?
I wouldn't have minded seeing a couple design quarterback runs.
Yeah.
That would have been okay for me. But, I'm not, like, upset about them not being there either. It is what it is.
Was the lack of rushing attempts, though, and like the game script being so that they really couldn't do that, was that asked to Mike Tomlin at all? Because I haven't seen anything about that. Like, was that addressed?
It wasn't sort of specifically in that way, but he kind of did, say, like, there's things we want to do and there's things they want to do. And the game played out to their agenda, not ours. And so you kind of have to throw away the things that you wanted to do. And so, yeah, I think they wanted to run the ball more. I think they feel good about their running game. They feel better about their running game. But I feel like the big picture for me is I thought they were not aggressive enough, and certainly not. And like, you said there's 10 carries. Well, there might have been 10 rushes, but there was a wide receiver screen. There was a Jalen Warren screen. There was a pop pass. Like, these are runs. It doesn't matter that they're characterized as passes. Like, a wide receiver screen is a run. A running back screen is a run. A pop pass is a run. A shovel pass is a run. Like, they're blocked as runs, and their intent is to be the same as the intent of a running play. You're looking for yardage here, not looking for big splash down the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to that point, though, we saw, the Steelers run blocking grades per PFF. Can you kind of throw those out for 1 week, but just because of how little they did it? Or
yes,
do you
10
think
snaps, 15 snaps.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can make a little judgment. Also, really good front. I mean, that's up there in terms of quality across the board. But I didn't think they did badly in run blocking. I just didn't think they did well enough to make it a thing that they felt like they could get chunk yardage in that area. That's the other thing about the 49ers. Like, even if you block them well, you're getting like 4 or 5 yards. Like, that's not a team that's going to miss a bunch of assignments, miss a bunch of tackles, and let you go running free through their defense. Not typically, anyway. And that is what we saw happen to the Steelers. And I think, man, the Steelers' offensive line is a lot better than it was, but I think it's still not what I would call great. Like they're still just sort of an average unit, and I think we kind of saw that on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, and I want to bring in a YouTube comment here to kind of go into this conversation, because Teddy says the Steelers match up so much better against the Browns than they do versus the 49ers. Highsmith will be able to be a factor in this one after being neutralized by Trent Williams. Roberts will get to play downhill because of the way that the Browns play. Holcomb won't be covering Kittle. Desmond King will get a helmet and play the run well. It won't be in the slots. Kenny, the O-line corners, definitely need to play better, but I think they match up much better against the Browns than the 49ers. Alan, what say you to that?
Tommy, good comment, one. And two, how about this for a response? Doesn't matter what I say to that. How about Patrick Peterson, who said that exact same thing after practice today? Patrick Peterson thinks the Steelers match up better against the Browns than they did the 49ers too. And I'll add a couple things that he said here. The lack of a fullback and the inclusion of a second tight end. The Browns don't use a fullback. They do use their second tight end, Harrison Bryant. They use him a good bit. And they play a lot less 3 receiver stuff. That makes life so much easier on the Steelers because the Steelers can play base defense against 12 personnel. They can't play base defense against a fullback. And we showed that because of the way the 49ers can interchange Samuel and McCaffrey. And the Browns don't do that. They're not going to put Donovan Peoples-Jones in the backfield. They're not going to split Nick Chubb out wide very often. They will do it occasionally. And so I think that it is a much easier matchup for the Steelers. And then you get rookie right tackle Diontae Jones making his first start against TJ friggin' Watt. Yeah, give me that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's going to be I guess that ties back to the Chooch conversation because if he's not able to go and you got Broderick Jones, a rookie tackle on one side, and Diontae Jones, a rookie tackle on the other side, going against the pass rushers they'd be going against. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those two hold up. But yeah, I don't know if Patrick Peterson mentioned this at all either, but he mentioned it on his All Things Covered podcast. He was also talking about just like the routes that the receivers run. Like it's a lot of in-breaking stuff for the 49ers. Cleveland doesn't do nearly as much as that, and they feel much more comfortable, or he does, I should say, about their ability to cover those types of routes that you're going to see the Cleveland Browns receivers run.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned that today, but I think it's just an offense that I think the Steelers match up very well against. I think that schematically what the Steelers want to do generally works better against what the Browns want to do than what the 49ers want to do. It's not as multiple in terms of personnel, in terms of formations, and let's just be perfectly honest, the players aren't as good. I mean, McCaffrey and Chubb are at least fairly close, but Njoku is not Kittle, and Cooper is not Ayuk and Samuel, and it's just not as good of a. Nobody is Trent Williams. It's just not as good of a team. Now their guards are good, Teller and Bitonio, but I think maybe Cleveland has a better interior line, and that could really come to play. And with the possibility of no Cam Heyward, banged up Larry O, banged up DeMarvin Leal, but it's just a better offense in general. And I think Brock Purdy is more difficult to play against as a defense than Deshaun Watson. Now, Deshaun Watson might make you pay for some stuff in a way that Brock Purdy isn't going to, but down in and down out, I just think he presents a much bigger challenge because you can't rush him. He gets rid of the ball so fast. That scheme just insulates him so much that they don't really need him to make plays, and so it's hard to stop him from doing it.
Yeah, I would agree. The last thing I wanted to get to here, I want to get your response on this from Chris, who on YouTube commented and said, "Alan, it sounds like you gave up on Kenny already."
I've not given up on Kenny. I'm not surprised by things about the team that I cover very often. And when I don't understand why something happened, I am very hesitant to speak about what might happen next. It had not been in my mind a possibility it was possible. I was not expecting that we would come out this year and that Kenny Pickett would not be as good as he was last year. Like I did not have that. And when it happens, I think we have to. When something unexpected happens, I don't want to write it. I'm not changing my outlook about things. Like it's one game, but you can't write it off either, right? So I don't know. I think I'm not out on Kenny, but I think we need to acknowledge the possibility that game was bad, and if there's more of those, everyone's going to be out on Kenny. And so, I'm not doubting him per se. Without really knowing why what happened, it's hard for me to say it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, and I think that makes perfect sense. I came out of the 49ers loss with the actual result of the game being the third thing that I was worried about, behind the way that Kenny looked and the injuries that they suffered in that football game. The actual result of that game, behind those two, I didn't care all that much about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was clearly the worst part of that, and I think the scariest part going forward, because if Kenny's not the guy, it's a bad place. You're looking at pushing the rebuild back 2-3 years probably. And so a lot riding on them getting this right. Like I said, it's so hard because I just don't know. I don't know why it happened. I don't understand it. And Kenny talk today was not necessarily elaborative. He seemed to say it was mostly just not being 100% on the same page with some guys, or I just I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, hopefully we get some answers in the near future. Alan, what do you say we do this again tomorrow?
I think that sounds good to me. And then maybe let's maybe see if Nick wants to do Friday. How's that sound? We'll get Nick in here, or maybe Dave.
Hey.
I don't know. One of the other guys.
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize. I don't want to be the only one talking on this channel. Apparently,
that's
people angry how much I speak here. So, I don't care.
Yeah, I was gonna say the person's name, but I don't know if I can say the person's name that said that. So But yeah, Alan, tell the people where they can find you, and we'll be back tomorrow.
You can find me at Steelers practice most of the time on the internet at @asaunders_PGH on X, at PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Read the words. That's how I get paid.
There we have it. You can find me at Zachary Smith PGH. Subscribe to the channel here. Leave us a like. Hit that notification bell. Comment down below. As you can see, we'll read some of the comments on each episode. So get at us on there. If you're listening somewhere else, leave us a 5-star review. Do all that good stuff. Read the words on the site from Alan, Nick, Derek, and the crew. Doing great stuff as always. Until tomorrow, for Alan, for Smitty, we'll be back. Thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive. We'll see you.